All right. Well, tonight our webinar is What's on Your Bucket List, presented by our very own Tim Augustine. And I will turn it over to you, Tim.
Great. Thanks, Heather. Thanks, everybody, for joining tonight. My name is Tim Augustine. I was initiated as a brother in 1992. And a lot of the things in my life have been impacted by Delta Sigma Pi. I actually married a brother that I met when I was in pledge class. I became pledge class president. I was the president of our chapter at Kent State University, and we have 3 dividends. I have a 19-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 15-year-old. So Delta Sigma Pi has been fantastic in my life, and this program tonight is based on some of those things that I've experienced over the years, but it was introduced by Delta Sigma Pi. So I'll tell you a little bit about my background first, and then we'll dive into the program. I own a firm called Atwell. We are a real estate development consultant around the country. We have 42 offices and about 1,400 employees around the country. We do a lot of work in the real estate market. We do a lot of work in the renewable energy like wind and solar market, and we do a lot of work in oil and gas. And on the side, I've written 3 books. My latest book is called How Hard Are You Knocking? Landing a Job in a Rebounding Economy. And I often give talks at Leeds and Grand Chapter Associate Professional Development. This specific program I'm going to talk about tonight, I was actually introduced to the concept my senior year at Delta Sigma Pi at Kent State. We had a speaker come into our chapter, and she presented how to develop a bucket list. And from that point forward, I actually created my first bucket list. I now have, this is my bucket list here. I have wine stains, tequila stains. There's probably 450 goals. I probably have scratched out about 200 of them. But I will tell you the foundation of creating a bucket list and your personal contract is what we're going to talk about tonight. So I will ask you to take out a pad of paper. I will ask you to take out a pen or a pencil, because I want this to be as interactive as possible. I'd like you to start building your bucket list now. And I promise 20 years from now, you're going to look back to the evening on Thursday night, November 10th, 2022 as one of those pivoting moments in your life, because I think you're going to find that when you start creating a bucket list for yourself, you're going to continue adding to it. So I was a senior, and Renata Tilgner came in and presented your bucket list. And I had no idea at the time what a bucket list was. And she kind of walked us through how do you create it. And, at first, most of the time you start creating things that are more retail. I want to buy a boat. I want to be a millionaire. I want to live here. I want to do this. But then once you kind of lift up the hood and start thinking about the legacy you want to leave in your life, I think that's when you start thinking about a bucket list that's much more broad. And what forced me to do this program was a friend of mine lost his son. And he lost his son, who was a college student named James. And when they were cleaning out and going through his room, on the top drawer of his in his bedroom drawer, they found a list that he started called Living a Full Life List, kind of like a bucket list. But on that list was get a Saturday job, get married, visit every continent, save a life. And when this happened and John told me about his son, it really hit me. And I think that is what spawned the idea of creating a bucket list program. I have delivered this about 8 years so far. And we've done it at LEAD. I've done it at Grand Chapter Congress. I've done it for a number of schools across the country. And it's been really well received. And so I want to start tonight at least sharing with you some details around creating a bucket list. And the facts that I want to share you came from a friend of mine who is a nurse. And she is a nurse in hospice. And, talking to her about hospice, and those of you that probably know hospice is care for your relative or loved one when they're seeing potential death. And it's really care and taking care of them and making sure they're comfortable and things of that nature. Well, I was talking to her and I asked her, in these conversations that you have with some of your patients, what kind of things do you hear? And she brought up the top 5 regrets that she hears. And the first one is, I wish I'd taken more risks. The second risk she heard about is, I wish I hadn't worked so hard in my job. And I would ask her questions like, what does that mean? And the patient was, well, I was an accountant and I worked 60 or 70 hours a week. and I missed my kid's football game. I missed my child's choir concert. I didn't get to participate in Cub Scouts or Girl Scouts. I didn't necessarily get to hang out with a lot of my friends. I worked hard with the intention of retiring at 65. And then when I would retire at 65, I would live this great life. And oftentimes the individuals that were in hospice might be 75. So they lived 10 years after they retired. And so again, the point of the story today is I really want to start thinking about your bucket list, my bucket list, and things that you can achieve in your life and accomplish in your life. Next regret is I wish I had the courage to follow through on my dreams. Many of her patients said, I had dreams of traveling the world. I had dreams of inventing something, or I had dreams of being a playwright. And it never came to fruition. As they got older, more and more responsibilities hit, and they never got a chance to fulfill those dreams. And the last one is I wish I'd stay in touch with my friends. And finally, I wish I explored and taken more risks. So I talk about this because as I hear these stories from my friends from hospice, I start thinking about my life. And, you know, I would attribute experiences that I've had in my life and my career, both personally and professionally, were really impacted by Renata's words when she talked about a bucket list. From standpoint of, on my bucket list, I have my first one that I have is I want to be a motivational speaker. And I've had a great life so far and experienced a lot of things. And there's two stories that I at least want to start with. The first story is the picture in the middle, and it was Oktoberfest in Munich. And at the time I lived in Chicago, and we thought we were going to, my wife and I, who's a brother, thought that we were going to be able to bribe somebody and get a table at Oktoberfest. And there's picnic tables in every tent. There are 7 tents located in a fairground in Munich, Germany. And in one tent, there might be 200 picnic tables, and all the tables were full. And I remember trying to bribe a server or somebody to get us a table. And the guy in the red shirt, Frank is his name, he walked up to me and he said, are you from America? Obviously, he must have known that I looked like I was from America and I was trying to bribe somebody. And he said, why don't you come and join us at our table? That table that you see right there, they've had that table for 47 years. They reserve the same table every year. And so we sat down, and it took a little bit of courage. I wondered, what is this guy's agenda? Why does he want us to sit with him? But once we let our guard down, had probably one of the best times we've ever had. We still keep in touch. And what was really funny about that story is if we wouldn't have sat down and experienced this, we really wouldn't have experienced Oktoberfest. The number one, and those of you that have been to Oktoberfest, you would know what I'm talking about. One of the most popular music acts in Germany is John Denver. And at the Oktoberfest, the Munich or the Oompa band would play John Denver, Take Me Home Country Road. And these guys at the table had index cards with English words that taught us, and he handed it over and I said, no, I know the words to this one. And again, the whole idea of a bucket list is getting out of your shell, breaking out of your shell, taking risks, doing things that you wouldn't normally do. The second story is the middle one to the right, which is a sweat lodge. I had 2 other Delta SIGs after I graduated. We went to Glacier National Park in Montana and we backpacked. And in Glacier, you don't really see a lot of people. And we saw a father and a son, Randy Rideout and Paul Rideout. And they were part of the Blackfoot Indian, which is a reservation right off of Glacier. And they came into our camp. We offered them lunch. We sat down and talked to them. And I asked a lot of questions around being a Native American, because I really have never encountered that before. And he said, you know, you seem really interested. Would you like to come back? You can stay at our house and we'll do a sweat lodge ceremony. So myself and 2 other Delta SIG brothers traveled to the reservation. We stayed at Randy's house. We slept in their basement, which was crazy because we didn't know these people from Adam. Slept in their basement. His wife was the medicine woman of the Blackfoot Indian tribe. She woke up, made a huge Native American breakfast, and they took us for a sweat lodge ceremony, which you can see right there. And it was one of the most meaningful events, I think, in my life. There's a lot of visions you see in a sweat lodge. And after the visions, Annie, who was the wife, walked us through our visions and actually gave me a buffalo tooth. I say that because your life is how you make it. If you pursue your dreams, if you pursue your goals, if you actually act on some of your goals, you're going to accomplish things and experience things you never expected. And talking is easy. I often get people coming up to me and saying, I'd like to write a book. And I said, okay, let's start. What are you going to write about? Or start writing now. Or I want to do this. I want to do this. And oftentimes what I find is people like to dream and talk, but people don't like to do. So tonight's program is really dedicated around putting things pen to paper and pushing you to start documenting your bucket list. So what is a bucket list? It's a list of experiences and achievements that every person hopes to accomplish during their lifetime. And so it doesn't have to happen at the end of your life. It can happen starting tomorrow, and the list can be varied. And I'm going to walk you through a number of categories as you're thinking about your bucket list. So there's all kinds of bucket lists. There are travel destinations, places you want to visit. There's a number of friends that they want to visit every state in the United States. They like to visit every continent. They want to visit every capital. They want to visit their hometown where they migrated from years and years ago. There's also career goals, things like I want to be a CEO. I want to be a vice president. I want to be a founder of a startup. Where do you want to grow financially? There are fun things like food you want to try. I'd like to try exotic foods. I'd like to eat street foods in Vietnam and understand what that's like, or eat street foods in China. So you think about foods that you like to try. It could be skills or hobbies that you'd like to learn. I'd like to learn a foreign language. I'd like to learn guitar. I really want to be in a band and start experiencing the fun of being a band as one of my hobbies outside of work and family. Maybe it's experiences you want to have. I want to do a great, I might want to go bungee jumping or go kayaking down the Young River or New River in West Virginia. I might want to go in a hot air balloon ride. So what kind of experiences are those things that you might want to explore? Life goals. I want to get my MBA. I want to have kids. I want to buy a house. I want to take care of my family. I want to buy my parents a home, whatever it may be. Or it might be fears that you want to overcome. I want to be more confident. I want to speak in front of a crowd. I don't want to have claustrophobia, so I want to go to Mammoth Cave and experience what it's like and get over my fear. So your bucket list can be well-rounded. What I typically have in my bucket list that you see here is my bucket list is just a general list. I try to prioritize my items. I put an A next to those things or put a B, A being the highest priority. Those priorities change as you get older. But what I have found is as you start thinking about your bucket list, once you start with the first top 10 items, you're going to start adding number 11 and then 12 and then 20 and then 40. And you're just going to go and go and go. This list travels with me everywhere I travel. I'm a little nuts. I had a chance one time to have dinner with Kid Rock. And at the time I lived in Michigan. And Kid Rock was a big deal, still is. And we were at a fundraiser and we said, if we donate to your fundraiser, would you be willing to go to dinner? And he agreed. He took us to dinner. Unbelievable experience. When I got home, I actually wrote, have dinner with Kid Rock so I could mark it off my list, which is a little neurotic. I completely understand. But it was one of those things that I want to look back and remember that experience. And that's the whole point of tonight. The goal is, this is your list. It's your list to live. It's your life to live. I recommend not having regrets, at least for myself. So that's the reason the bucket list topic and doing a bucket list is so important. And here's probably the most salient example I can give you is that is a picture of me. I grew up in Ohio, and that is Humphrey, my bullfrog. I was in a frog jumping competition in Mansfield, Ohio. We have a competition. It's very funny. We have a competition where we do frog jumping, and you go and catch a bullfrog in the evenings, and then you save your bullfrog, and then during 4th of July, you'll have a big parachute in the middle of a crowd. You will lay the frog on the parachute. You'll slap next to it, and the 3 jumps make up the score. And Humphrey jumped 14 feet 3 inches, and I have a trophy that my wife absolutely hates to prove that I won the frog jumping competition. But here's the point of this slide, is that as you get older, you're going to find reasons not to do things. So if you think about when you were young, 0 to 5, I want to be a mermaid. I want to be a NBA basketball star. I want to be a surgeon. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be Michael Jordan or Julius Erving. So you start thinking about, absolutely, you can do anything in your life. And then you start getting a little older, from 5 years to 15 years. You start becoming a teenager. You start asking, why can't I be a brain surgeon? Why can't I play pro baseball? Why couldn't I be in a band? I play drums and I could be in a band. And then you get a little older and you get into college, 15 to 20-year-old. All of a sudden you start thinking, I think I can. Biology is a little hard. Chemistry is tough. Physics is tough. College is a little hard, but I think I can weather through this, get my degree, and become whatever you want to become. An entrepreneur, a partner in a big four firm. You want to start a nonprofit. In college, you start thinking about all these career dreams that you have after graduation. Then you graduate, you're 20 to 25 years old, and all of a sudden you start saying, well, maybe I'll go back and get an MBA. Maybe I will follow this dream. Maybe I'll invent a product, or maybe I'll buy a motorcycle. And then when you're 25 or older, what I found is there's a lot more responsibilities. It's not practical for me, a family, a father of 3, to own a motorcycle. It's not practical to go skydiving with my college buddies. It's not practical to spend a month in Italy if I wanted to spend a month in Italy, because I have responsibilities. I have a house. I have mortgages. I have a big screen TV. I have car payments. You have all these things in your life. So the reason I share this slide is, as you get older, you're going to find reasons not to pursue items on your bucket list. And my challenge to you is change that paradigm, change that programming, change that. Instead of saying maybe or it's not practical, start thinking, okay, how can I get this done and when can I get this done? And that's probably the biggest advice I give to people that ask me about a bucket list. Is my comment is always the same. It's easy to talk. It's easy to say I want to write a book. It's easy to say I want to run a marathon. It's easy to say I want to do X, Y, and Z. It's hard when you put it to paper. It's hard when you try to figure out step 1. And it's hard when you give it a date certain. And that is what I ask everybody in my programs. When I deliver this to colleges, I ask them, okay, you want to go to Italy. Okay, when are you going to go to Italy? And somebody in the audience will say, well, I'll go by 2023. And my comment is, what month? So what month are you going to get Italy? I believe traveling to Italy is the best in the fall. It's a little cooler. So what if you went to Italy in October? Okay, October in 2023, you're going to visit. Okay, what's your first step? I'm going to find somebody that's been to Italy. So I ask around the room, who's been to Italy? Raise your hand. Let's share contact information. I've been to Italy a number of times. Email me. I'll give you a bunch of sites to see. I'll give you guides and so forth. So again, as you develop your bucket list, it's important that you identify when you want to accomplish that goal, even if it's a 2-year window. It just can't be indefinite. I'd like to accomplish this any time in my life. So again, change that programming, change that paradigm. Since I started delivering this program, as I mentioned years and years ago, I've had a lot of people at the end of the program. I ask, and I'll give the same thing to you. At the end of this program, I'm going to give you my email address. If you send me an email with a picture of you accomplishing something that's on your bucket list, and this can be any item, I will send you a free book. I'll sign it. I'll send it to you. You can't sell it on eBay, but I will send it to you. I'll email it to you, all on me. Just email me a picture of your bucket list item, whatever you achieve. And it's honesty at this point. So I've asked people to email me. These are some of the comments that I've gotten over the years. I ran my first marathon 6 months after your session. I've now completed 3 marathons and have a bucket list with over 100 goals. Thanks, Tim. Your session completely changed my direction. I completed my first book about sports fans and landed a job with Under Armour. I retired 3 months after your bucket list. And I know this gentleman, John, very well, who wrote this. And I remember at the end of my talk, he said, I'm retiring. I said, whoa, don't retire on my account. Don't blame me if it's the second time. He said, I retired 3 months after your bucket list talk. I have now visited 13 countries and on my way to visit all 7 continents. And John would tell you, he's living the dream. Last thing is, after your session, I reached out to my mother, who I haven't spoken to in 4 years. We cried, laughed, apologized about 100 times. You have reconnected my family. From the bottom of my heart, Tim, thank you. So the point of the bucket list is it can be across the board. It could be travel goals, career goals, physical goals, personal goals, like reconnecting with a relative that you haven't talked to in a while, or going home and telling your spouse or your significant other that you love them, or telling your parents thank you for sending me to college. Thank you for sponsoring Delta Sigma Pi. Just thank you. So the idea of the bucket list, and this is what we're still counting. Since the bucket list, we've had 37, mostly brothers, go skydiving. 56 people have visited their first foreign country. 13 have written a book. 23 have their mentor. 13 have started companies. 11 reconnected with their family. 39 have changed jobs. 32 landed their dream job, and 12 have run in their first marathon. So again, the challenge is out to every one of you. If you achieve something on your bucket list, send me an email. I will send you a free book, and I would love to see a picture of it. If you don't want to send a picture, that's fine too. Just email me. I'll send you a book, but hopefully the bucket list makes an impact. Okay, so let's start on your list. If you could take out a pad of paper, take out a pen, and we're going to start with easy stuff. I want to start with where would you like to travel? And again, don't be confined within the state that you're in or the city that you're in. Don't be confined. You know, if you want to travel to the moon, my generation probably won't, but I imagine that my kids' generation might. They might have space travel. They might have a chance to visit a space station on the moon. So where would you like to travel? If you wouldn't mind taking a minute and writing down 3 places where you would like to travel in your lifetime. And I don't have music like Jeopardy, but you get the idea. So if you could write 3 items down of places that you'd like to travel, whether it's a city, whether it's a country. The next item that I'd like you to do is stay within travel. I'd like you to put next to those 3 items when you would like to travel there. If you put Japan, when would you like to visit Japan? You want to visit New Zealand, when? And again, the more detailed you are, the better. And I'll explain why in a second. But I want you to set this goal. Maybe it's the next 5 years. That's okay. 5 years from now, you should put that down on your list. Here's the reason a written bucket list or a typed bucket list is important. And you'll read all kinds of articles about have a bucket list in your head, have a bucket list on your iPhone. In my experience, as soon as I write down a goal, as soon as I write down one of my goals, it almost becomes a contract with me. It forces me to follow through on something that I wrote down. And there have been times when I've written things down and it's a BHAG. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal. It's something that, you know, that'll take a lot of time. That'll take a lot of energy. That'll take a lot of money. But I still wrote it down. And I find that when you write something down, it's a contract to yourself. And again, I said, it's easy to talk about doing things. It's hard to follow through. So we're finished with where you want to travel. This is just the beginning. If you want to, on your bucket list, have categories, places you want to travel, career goals, professional goals, by all means, organize it the way you want to organize it. Second section, if money were no object, right now, if money were no object, what would be some of your dream purchases? If money were no object, what would you like to buy? Would you like to buy a home for your parents? Would you like to buy a second home in Italy? Would you like to buy a mansion, buy a private jet, buy a yacht, buy a boat, buy a motorcycle? What are 3 things that you'd like to buy if money were no object? To me, this is the low-hanging fruit. This is the stuff that's a little bit easy, but I want to start easy because we're going to get a little bit more detailed here in a few minutes. But I want to start thinking about those kind of things. Moving on, step 2. I want you to think as if you were a child, and I want you to go back. What were some of the goals that you had when you were a kid? You wanted to be an astronaut. You wanted to play in the NBA. You wanted to dunk a basketball. You wanted to be whatever. What you want to be a mermaid. I want you to think about back when you were a child, what were some of your great dreams, great goals? And the reason I'm asking you to think about those is those often can translate. Granted, I'm not going to be an NBA star. My 1-inch vertical is probably not going to get me there. However, I might say I want to be physically fit in the next 10 years because that's one of my childhood goals. So a lot of times your childhood goal to translate, like I want to be a princess, I want to drive a spaceship. I want to step on the moon. Could be, I want to become a successful entrepreneur. I want to be in a space simulator. I want to visit Japan. And then what I'd like you to do is write down some of those childhood dreams. What were some of the things that you wanted to do when you were a kid? What were some of the goals that you had with your friends playing on the playground, you had with your first grade teacher? What were some of the topics that you had in school that really made you think outside the box, and those teachers that really impacted your life? What were some of the dreams that you had when you were a child? You will find that some of those dreams are still attainable. Even though you might be a little bit older, even though you might have more responsibilities, some of those things you can still pursue. And again, there's nothing more satisfying than having a bucket list item and being able to mark it off. It's fantastic. Next, step 3, add some personal stuff. So this way, I'd actually like you to think about some things that are a little bit more personal to you. Tell my mom or dad I love them, lose 50 pounds, become more confident, be a better speaker, be less insecure, have less stress, find ways for mindfulness or meditate more often. And mindfulness is something that I highly, highly recommend as you become more entrenched in your career. Mindfulness is by far one of those topics right now that's probably one of the hottest discussion points among senior executives, about being able to relax the mind and being able to shut out the noise, is practicing mindfulness, practicing meditation a few minutes a day. So here's a question. What's on your list of personal items? I would like you to start writing down your top 3. Personal things that you would like to accomplish, you'd like to achieve, you would like to experience. Another topic. If money were no object and time was no object, how would you prefer to spend your time? If you were a billionaire and didn't need to work, you were retired and didn't need to work, what kind of things would you like to do in your life? Would you like to travel and build orphanages? Would you like to read more often? Would you like to spend time with your relatives, your grandparents, your parents? It's funny, I was a Cub Scout pack master for my two boys, and one of the projects that we had was videotaping their grandparents. So we set up a tripod, we set up the video camera, and my kids asked my parents all kinds of questions. What kind of food do you hate? What kind of food do you love? What was the fastest car you ever had? Tell us about your first girlfriend. Tell us about your first boyfriend. Tell us about this. And the questions that they asked were absolutely hilarious. But it made me really think how priceless that video will be. And my parents, luckily, are still around. But it's amazing how priceless that video will be in 5 and 10 and 15 years when my boys pull it out of their memory boxes. So again, I come back to you. If money were no object and you could spend your time any way possible, how would you spend your time? And I'd like you to identify at least 2 items. So we've talked about a lot of things. We talked about the easy stuff, place you like to travel, purchases that you like to have. Then we went a little bit, we went back to your childhood. What are some of those dreams that you had? Step 3, a little bit more personal items, identifying things on your list that are personal only to you that you would like to accomplish. Again, writing it down is that contract that you have with yourself. And then again, spending your time. How would you like to do it if money and time are no object? Step 4, professional goals. So what would you like to achieve in your career and professional? Do you want to get an MBA? Do you want to get a CPA? Do you want to get certified? Do you want to get a PhD and eventually become a professor? Do you want to get certified in black belt? Do you want to work for your dream company? You know, what are some of your professional goals that you have? This section ties right in closely with How Hard Are You Knocking, where a lot of the things I talk about in the book are around identifying an industry that you want to work in, that you have a passion for. So identify an industry that you have a passion for, figure out where you want to live, and then try to identify 5 to 10 firms that are in that industry and in that geographic location and research those 5 firms. Spend more time in your career strategy researching those firms and then finding connections. Getting this list, and I'm gonna talk about sharing your bucket list with your friends, but I often recommend the same thing on the career path. If you have a list of dream companies that you want to work for, and that's some of your professional goals, share those dream companies with your close friends or share them with the chapter and ask them, do you know anybody that works at one of these firms that you could foster an introduction? And that is the art of networking, the ability to open corporate doors. And that's, again, one of your professional goals. So I'm asking you to identify what are some of your professional goals. So now you're starting to see a trend. You're starting to write down things on paper that you want to achieve. There's personal, there's professional, there's childhood dreams and so forth. This is the foundation of your list. Now what I'd like you to do is, and I'm going to run an audio real quick, so bear with me. But if you could just listen to this Alan Watts description of what is if money were no object.
What makes you itch? What sort of a situation would you like? Let's suppose, I do this often in vocational guidance of students. They come to me and say, well, we're getting out of college and we haven't the faintest idea what we want to do. So I always ask the question, what would you like to do if money were no object? How would you really enjoy spending your life? Well, it's so amazing. As a result of our kind of educational system, crowds of students say, well, we'd like to be painters, we'd like to be poets, we'd like to be writers, but as everybody knows, you can't earn any money that way. Or another person says, well, I'd like to live an out-of-doors life and ride horses. I say, do you want to teach in a riding school? Let's go through with it. What do you want to do? When we finally got down to something which the individual says he really wants to do, I will say to him, you do that. And forget the money. Because if you say that getting the money is the most important thing, you will spend your life completely wasting your time. You'll be doing things you don't like doing in order to go on living, that is, to go on doing things you don't like doing, which is stupid. Better to have a short life that is full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way. And after all, if you do really like what you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is, you can eventually turn it, you could eventually become a master of it. It's the only way to become a master of something, to be really with it. And then you'll be able to get a good fee for whatever it is. So don't worry too much. Somebody's interested in everything. And anything you can be interested in, you'll find others will. But it's absolutely stupid to spend your time doing things you don't like in order to go on spending things you don't like and doing things you don't like, and to teach your children to follow in the same track. See, what we're doing is we're bringing up children and educating them to live the same sort of lives we're living, in order that they may justify themselves and find satisfaction in life by bringing up their children, to bring up their children to do the same thing, so it's all wretch and no vomit. It never gets there. And so, therefore, it's so important to consider this question: what do I desire?
Thanks for listening to that. And that was Alan Watts in If Money Were No Object. So if you want to look it up online, but that video, and there's a video associated, but that's the audio version. It completely makes you think that life is short, and experiencing and even having kids, the way you teach your kids to think about life and think outside of the box. I think that's part of the bucket list topic, is that you're forcing yourself to pursue your dreams. You're forcing yourself to pursue those goals that you've written down. So moving on to step 6. Now I want you to add some weird stuff. Add stuff that's completely out of the box. I want to go stargazing. I want to go bungee jumping. I want to sleep in a teepee. I want to go skinny dipping. I want to go on a hot air balloon ride. I want to eat a moose steak. But what are some things that you would like to experience in your life? What are some weird hobbies that you might have? What are some weird experiences that you've heard other people have? But I'd like you to document 3 of those items if you don't mind. What would you like to do that's a little off the beaten path? It doesn't necessarily tie in with your career. It doesn't necessarily tie in with a personal goal or a professional goal. It might just be one of those experiences that you'd like to check off and say that was a really cool experience and I want to document the results of it. Number 7, and this is my whole point, is make it real. You have to make yourself accountable, and creating a bucket list is easy. At least took a first step. Writing a bucket list and having a bucket list is the first step. I believe it's easy to talk about, harder to do. But when you look at your bucket list, one of the items that I want you to do is go back through every one of your goals, add a date, add a month, add a day, add a goal. When do you want to accomplish this? And what is one step toward that? One step might be, I want to meet somebody that's lived overseas. I want to meet somebody that started a company. I want to meet. So therefore, sharing this list, your bucket list, and you don't have to share your personal items, but I would highly recommend sharing your bucket list with your friends, with your family, with your classmates, with the chapter. Because I do think that you're going to find other people in your chapter that have the same goals, have the same items on their bucket list. All of a sudden you have a travel buddy. All of a sudden you have somebody to go skydiving with, or go to Germany with, or to start a company with, because they're going to have similar goals. So step 7 is start thinking about making your bucket list real. Document your goals, but make it real by identifying a date and the first step of how you're going to do it. Step 8 is I want you to write down what you achieved. So not only do you have a bucket list and marking it off, I would recommend start either taking pictures. You saw the collage that I started with tonight. That's a collage of pictures that I have. I have Shutterfly books. We probably have 100 Shutterfly books where we took all of our pictures from a trip. Every trip we take, we now document in Shutterfly. I would highly recommend some way of capturing that experience, whether it's through pictures like a Shutterfly album, whether it's journaling, where you have a book like this. This is my journal, where you have a book like this. It sits on my nightstand. I have ideas in here. I have to-dos in here. I have inventions that have never seen the light of day. I'm not very good at inventions. But again, writing down those things, almost like a diary, you're going to find your bucket list becomes a living, breathing document. That not only did you accomplish this goal on your bucket list, but looking back 10 years at a time, what did you accomplish in the last 10 years? What did you accomplish in the last 20 years? Here's our experiences. And you've heard it all before. People say life is short, which I totally agree with, but life is also full of chapters. Chapters in your life. College right now is a chapter. Delta Sigma Pi is a chapter. Being an alumni is a chapter. Being in your career is a chapter. Being married is a chapter. Having kids is so think of your life as a book. How many chapters are you going to live? How many chapters are you going to experience? And look back and think about the legacy that you left behind. Step 9, now we start prioritizing. As you have your list, I recommend referring it to it often. So again, my list is always with me, but I'm looking through my list all the time. I'm adding to it all the time. But there are points in my book or in my bucket list that are time sensitive. Telling my parents that I love them. I just had a chance to have a vacation with them down here in Florida, and my whole family came, and it was a magical experience. My mother said, I didn't think I would have a chance to step foot in the ocean ever again. It was very emotional. And so prioritizing things that are more timely, more time sensitive, I think is important. So go through your list and maybe prioritize just those items that you want to accomplish in the next 6 months or you want to accomplish in the next year. Prioritize your bucket list, and as you go through it, continue. And the time frame is completely up to you, 6 months, 1 year, whatever it is. But build a priority system where you can accomplish those goals first. So you might want to ask, well, why? Why spend the time? Why spend the energy on building a bucket list? And I started really thinking about it. At first, when I was preparing for this talk tonight, I was trying to look up stats, and I'm looking up facts and stats around what does happiness mean, and the level of depression in society today, the level of suicide in kids today. COVID really made a huge impact. Social media has impacted people's psyche, I believe. Happiness seems to be tough, political stuff going on all the time. And you start thinking about how important is it to be happy? And so I didn't want to use any stats. I wanted to use, in my mind, some bullets that I thought. So number one is I believe you're living a fulfilling life. By having a bucket list, by experiencing new things, pushing yourself out of your limits, I believe that like I can truly tell you I have no regrets. There's mistakes that I've made, hell yes. But I would tell you I'm trying to live the best life that I can. I'm trying to live an exciting life. I think having a bucket list is helping you live a fulfilling life. Number two, I think it forces you to think about what you want. It forces you to think about what is important in your life, what is important with your family, not what society tells me, not what TikTok tells me or Instagram or what my friends are doing, but what is truly important in your life. Number three, it forces you and motivates you. It allows you to focus on achieving something, and it motivates you and get you excited. Just like vacation planning. Those of you that planned a vacation and had your vacation, sure, the vacation and the destination is fantastic, but it's also fantastic to plan a vacation. You start thinking about what you want to do, what you want to see, where you want to eat, experiences that you want to have. That's what a bucket list is it forces you to think forward to something. I'm going to take a trip. I'm going to travel overseas. I'm looking forward to the next chapter in life. And I think that is what a bucket list can do, is it can force you to focus and motivate you to go after those items. It pushes the boundary outside your comfort zone. Eating crazy foods. I thought a hot air balloon ride would be terrifying. And at first it is a little terrifying when you go up, but once you get up there, it's very relaxing and quiet, but pushes the boundaries outside your comfort zone. I think it's important. I think by crossing off items on your bucket list, it makes you feel accomplished. You accomplish something, and I think that's an important aspect of even in your career. One piece of advice I give to job seekers is write down everything that you've accomplished in your life. Got an A in marketing. I was the president of our chapter. I was in charge of fundraising or pledge education, or here's what I did. Here's something that I accomplished. By having that list of accomplishments, you will walk into the interview more confident. By having that list of accomplishments, you will write a resume that's much more confident. It's the same thing with this, is by having a bucket list that you have things that are crossed off. It's just satisfying to know, yes, I have traveled to Italy. Yes, I have had kids and bought a house and whatever's on your list. Next thing is it makes you more interesting. I think there's a saying that I've read, Stephen Covey and Dale Carnegie both have said it. Be interested, not interesting, meaning being interested in other people, ask a lot of questions, but it doesn't hurt to have a well-balanced life and experience things, and you can be interesting. So when somebody says, have you ever been to Oktoberfest? Yes, I have. Have you ever been to the Great Wall of China? Yes, I have. Have you ever done this? You know, I think it's important in conversations and in networking and meeting new people is a bucket list can help create more interesting stories and experiences. It keeps you active. It creates a legacy, and it allows you to dream big. The bucket list is your ticket to dream big. Nobody can tell you what's on your bucket list but you. It allows you to think outside the box. It allows you, I'm in a rock band right now called Midlife, not Midlife Crisis, just Midlife. And my wife makes fun of it. It's hilarious. We have gigs. It is a blast. We play all pop rock 90s. But that was one of my bucket list items, is being a band. And we have a ball. We do 10 to 15 shows a year, and it is an absolute ball to do. But again, if you go back to that one slide, it's not practical for me to own a company, do seminars, write books, and then be in a rock band. But again, it's one of those things that allows you to dream big. So in my mind, those points are why you take the time and energy to create a bucket list. I think it's important. Now, part of a bucket list is changing your paradigm. It's changing the way you look at things. So some of you might see an elderly woman. Some of you might see a young woman. Some of you might see both. Some of you might not know what the heck I'm talking about. But there's a saying, change the way you look at things and things you look at will change. So if you look at on the left-hand side, you see a protrude like a nose. That is the nose of the younger woman, and the ear is right to the right-hand side, and there's a little chin. So that's the younger woman looking to the left away from us. The older woman, that is a wart on her nose. You will see her eyeball, which is the younger lady's ears. That slit is the mouth, the nose, and the chin, and the elderly woman is looking to the left. But here's the point. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will change. And the best example I can give is a recent example. I had one of my participants at one of my seminars call me and say, I got a job at Ernst & Young, and I hate it. I've been here a year. I'm working on Excel. I'm doing Excel every single day. I'm not meeting a lot of people. I hate my job. And that was one of his dream companies. And I said, Nick, what if you approached this differently? What if you approached it that every day you're going to meet someone new at Ernst & Young? What if every day you're going to learn a new skill, like learn a new function in Excel, or learn PowerPoint, or meet the accountants and understand how the income statement is derived? So every day or every week, you set a goal for yourself and go into your job thinking differently than just my job as an accountant doing Excel. A year later, he called me and said, I absolutely love Ernst & Young. I love what I'm doing. I've met a lot of people. I've been promoted. And I think that's a perspective of change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will change. And that's the idea of the bucket list as well. Don't necessarily put yourself in with a barrier and say, I can't do this. I can't accomplish this. That's not practical. Is change that paradigm and reprogram your brain to go after those goals. The last few slides, consider the following. You want things on your bucket list that you will, not someday, but things that you'll do today. So don't just say, I'm going to someday do this. I want to say, I'm going to do this, and I want to do it sooner rather than later. That's the idea of the dates. Look at other people's bucket lists. Share your bucket list with other people. See if they have similar ideas. Maybe you'll travel together. Maybe you'll meet a significant other. Maybe you'll meet a best friend. If you have like-minded goals, that would be amazing. Develop a balanced list. Your bucket list should not just be retail, like I want to buy a boat, I want to buy a private jet. It might include travel, hobbies, finances, relationships. So make sure there's a balanced list. Don't involve pessimists. I believe I cannot stand people that are negative. I try to get them out of my life. I'm not a big fan of pessimists. So when you find somebody that you share a bucket list with them and they will say, that's not practical, you won't write a book, you won't be in a movie, you won't be a model, just leave that person and share it with someone else. Life is too short, in my mind, to be around people that bring you down. You are the product of the 5 people you hang out with the most. So the 5 people that you see every day, the people you talk to, your personality becomes part of those 5 people. So if you hang out with lazy people, you're going to be lazy. If you hang out with high achievers, you're going to be a high achiever. If you hang out with kind and respectful people, you're going to be kind and respectful. So don't involve pessimists in your bucket list. Give it to the people that think big, that can help boost you up. Don't get obsessed with retail goals. Like I said, make sure it's a balanced list, and make sure your list is fun and a living list. It's always changing. I mentioned I carry this thing with me all the time. There's stains, there's wine, there's tequila, there's all kinds of things. It's a living list. Your list will evolve, and you should keep updating it. So those are some tips and tricks. The last thing I'll leave you with is, again, why a bucket list? Here's the idea. 1 in 3 people will be disabled before they turn 55 years old. It might be your mind, it might be your knees, it might be your hips, it might be your legs. At the end of the day, that is a real stat that 1 of 3 people will become disabled. Don't wait for that time to go after your dreams or write a bucket list or experience the life you want. Only 14% of Americans take a 2-week vacation. It's ridiculous. When you go to other countries where they take holiday for 30 days, there's a work-life balance. Push yourself outside of that norm. Make sure you have a work-life balance. Travel on the weekends. Try to get a company that has great vacation benefits. And given the fact, so when I give this talk, I normally am speaking to college students. And so I've calculated the age. So everybody on this call will be a little different. But what if you only had 15,321 days left to live? How would you live that day? There's 168 hours in a week. Can't block that. So how are you going to spend those hours? How are you going to spend that time? Is it going to be pursuing your dreams, going after your goals? Is it watching TikTok? How are you going to spend the next 15,321 days that you have left to live? And the last point, no regrets. Life is short. I think it's important to follow your dreams, follow your goals, and accomplish those goals and mark them off. But no regrets is the whole theme. So here's my information. If you want to share with me your bucket list, if you want to ask me questions, if you want to contact me, the challenge is still on. If you accomplish the goal that you want, that you achieve. So if something's on your bucket list and you achieve it, if you would email me at this email, taugustine@atwell-group.com, link in with me if you want to connect, Facebook with me, Twitter. But if you want to send me an email and say, here's a picture of me running a marathon, all that I will need is a place to send your book. You don't need to give me your address. Give me a place to send your book at work or a P.O. box, doesn't matter. I will send you a signed copy of the book just for participating. But I would love to hear about your accomplishments. I wish you the absolute best of luck pursuing your bucket list. Thanks for joining tonight. You could have been a lot of places on a Thursday night. I appreciate you joining tonight. And thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.